Hello, awesome humans, and welcome to episode 3 of Charity Island Discs. First off, sorry for the hiatus. Setting up a freelance consultancy in the middle of a pandemic took a lot more labour than I thought it would, but we're back now, and the plan is to do these a lot more frequently. So first off, as always, a really big thank you to Nikki and Simon and the guys at Fundraising Everywhere. Even though I host this, they're the guys that really power it, and without them, it wouldn't happen. So massive thanks there. Also, a big thank you to all the feedback and the continual feedback that we get from people, all the positivity about the show. Massively appreciate it, and it's because of that that we kind of keep going. So thanks for that. But if it's your first time tuning in, basically what we're trying to do with Charity Island Discs is just kind of connect a bit better. And get under the skin of the great and the good in the sector, and sort of get behind the LinkedIn profiles a bit and connect to the humanity of that person. And what better way to do that than through music? So it's my absolute pleasure, and it's a long time coming, to introduce our third guest, and that is the one and the only Ross McCulloch. Now, Ross very kindly sent through a bio, which I'm just going to read out word for word because it's so awesome. If I can find it, bear with me. Yeah, so Ross is director at Third Sector Lab Limited. He's worked with a wide range of charity and public sector clients on digital strategy, including Relationship Scotland, SCVO, Oxfam, Enable Scotland, and Scottish Government. Ross facilitates SCVO's Digital Senior Leaders Programme and as a trustee of Parenting Across Scotland and Impact Funding Partners. Recently, Ross has worked with Nominet to help them deliver the Reboot platform to tackle digital exclusion and the Catalyst to bring service design principles to a range of charities. So it's my absolute pleasure to welcome the one and only Ross McCulloch. Hello, mate. How you doing?
Oh, all right. I've never had an introduction like that. That's really good.
You sound like a very important person.
No, totally. No.
So it's absolutely great to have you on. How have you found choosing the discs?
It was good. Yeah. Do you know, it's weird trying to choose 8 tracks and I'm trying to choose a mix of tracks. I think the thing I'd said to you before was trying to choose something that is not going to really annoy people, and you'll never have anyone comes back to listen to the show again. If I just choose I was kind of swithering whether the first track would just be some Hard as Nails Gabbers track from 1994, and then everyone will immediately switch off and not listen to any more of this ever again. So I've not done that because I don't want to do that to you. So
excellent stuff, Ross. Yeah, but we're expecting some serious BPM from you compared to a lot of guests. So why don't we dive straight in? What's your first disc and why have you chosen it?
Yeah, the first one is not BPM at all. So the first one is Nina Simone. I always get the name of this track mixed up. So it's Ain't Got No, I Got Life, which is the most clunky song title ever. So I love Nina Simone. I think there's nobody that has a voice like her ever. She's phenomenal. And I guess the first time I heard her, it's really cheesy the first time I heard her, but it's unashamedly. There was a film called The Assassin. I think it had a different name in the States, and it was a remake of Luc Besson's film Nikita. And it's a pretty terrible film. I've rewatched it since, and it's actually total trash. But anyway, the character in it is obsessed with Nina Simone, and there's lots of Nina Simone tracks in the film. And I just remember hearing her going, that voice is amazing. And then just been obsessed with Nina Simone ever since. I think the film came out in 1993 or something. So I was about 13. Yeah. But yeah, she's amazing.
Brilliant. Well, this is certainly one way to open the show with an absolute banger. Hold on to your hats. Nina Simone.
Ain't got no home, ain't got no shoes, ain't got no money, ain't got no class, ain't got no skirts, ain't got no sweaters, ain't got no perfume, ain't got no love, ain't got no faith. I ain't got no culture, ain't got no mother, ain't got no father, ain't got no brother, ain't got no children, ain't got no aunts, ain't got no uncles, ain't got no love, ain't got no mind. I ain't got no country, ain't got no schooling, ain't got no friends, ain't got no nothing, ain't got no water, ain't got no air, ain't got no smoke, ain't got no ticket, ain't got no water, ain't got no love, ain't got no faith, ain't got no God, ain't got no wine, ain't got no money, ain't got no faith, ain't got no God, ain't got no love. And what about God? Why am I alive anyway? Yeah, what about God? Nobody can take away. I got my hair, got my head, got my brains, got my head, got my eyes, got my nose, got my mouth. I got my sense. I got my arms, got my hands, got my fingers, got my legs, got my feet, got my toes, got my liver, got my blood. I've got life. I've got life. I've got a headache and toothache and bad times too, like you. I got my hair, got my head, got my brain, got my ears, got my eyes, got my nose, got my mouth. I got my smile. I got my tongue, got my chin, got my neck, got my booty, got my heart, got my soul, got my back. I got my face. I got my arms, got my head, got my fingers, got my legs, got my feet, got my toes, got my liver, got my blood. I've got life. I've got my freedom. Oh, I've got
Yeah, absolute banger there. I don't think you're going to be ostracizing many people with that. It's pretty hard to choose a Nina Simone track as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's so many amazing ones.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so moving on, let's dive down into where you're from and your family. So talk to us about growing up.
Yeah, so I'm from Dunfermline originally, which is a town in the east coast of Scotland, in Fife, the Kingdom of Fife, to give it its correct terminology. There'll be a kind of like a finite number of people who know where Fife is or what Fife is all about, but we're definitely different from most of the rest of Scotland. Lots of people from the rest of Scotland would maybe not say in a very good way, but that's I'll let people draw their own conclusions from that. So I grew up in Dunfermline. I grew up in a housing scheme. So our first house was a council flat above a pub. I lived there till I was about 8, I think. And then we moved to another council house just down the street. So I grew up there, lived there till I moved to uni in Glasgow with mum and dad, only child, which probably explains a lot of my traits and my rudeness. But So yeah, that was me growing up.
Wow, only child. Couldn't tell, Ross, not at all.
Right
Excellent. So let's dive into your second disc. What have you chosen and why?
Yeah, so my second disc, right, this is where I start to ostracize your listeners very quickly. So this is from TTF, so the Time Frequency. So they were a Scottish dance act who kind of fall into the genre of kind of Scottish hardcore, but were definitely much more mainstream. And they were pretty much the band that kind of paved the way for a lot of Scottish acts being in the charts. And there's this really interesting anomaly. So like Scotland had its own charts from like 1994 till like maybe like the early 2000s. So there was like a separate chart in Scotland from the rest of the UK. And it's like when you look back over those years, there were like really hard dance acts in like the top 10 all the time. And like acts that never made it anywhere else. And just that weird, unique like sound that Scotland had during the kind of early 90s into the late 90s, that kind of hardcore dance sound. But I mean, TTF, like they played on Top of the Pops once. Like there was like a period of time where they were a big act and they're amazing. And they're utter cheese at the same time as well.
Mm-hmm.
But this song kind of like, I don't know, sums up an era of that sound. And I think particularly where I grew up in a housing scheme and like at the school that I went to, it was like people were sharing like mixtapes, so like big events like Resurrection and Fantasia, and like from clubs like Nosebleed and Versailles and Fubar. It was like these underground like hardcore mixtapes where like bad MCing over the top and like very dodgy recordings. But that was the sound of that time, and this song like encapsulates it for me. It's like unashamed, like big room dance music, like goosebumps. So for your Scottish listeners, this is TTF. You'll know what it is. For your non-Scottish listeners, they won't have a clue. An interesting thing, actually, I was thinking about. There was a poll maybe last year, and they were trying to choose like the song that they played when Scotland scored a goal in any football match, which doesn't happen very often, but it happens a bit more these days. And like so there was various like cliched songs like Lunch from the Proclaimers and all this stuff. And then in amongst that was a song called Bits and Pieces. And anyone in Scotland knows what this song is, and it's like very high BPM, hardcore dance track. And the guy's like Dutch maybe. And it's like a total anthem in Scotland. And it won the poll like phenomenally above everything else. So like I think they maybe still do it for a period of time, like this very hard, high tempo dance tune was the thing that got played when Scotland scored a goal. So it probably got played like 3 times over the course of the year.
Cool. Well, let's have a listen to this. I've got to be completely honest. I don't know the band at all, but I know the track, and it's an absolute banger. So hold on to your hats again. This is the Time Frequency.
It's like a new emotion. What a feeling, what a feeling. It's like a new emotion. Can you feel the
Excellent choice. But that brings back a few memories. And I
Yeah,
think that's a nice kind of segue now to, you know, our next sort of chat. So let's talk about kind of the teenage years, which I'm sure is going to involve a bit of clubbing and a bit of background to the Scottish dance scene. So
yeah. So you know, it's interesting actually. Like clubbing to me, so going to clubs like where I grew up, there was not a huge amount of dance clubs, and it was probably more like cheesy carpet and chrome nightclubs that you'd find in any UK small town. And so like the clubbing that I loved probably came in later years when I went to uni. So when I was 17, I went to uni. But yeah, growing up, teenage years, are probably why I've chosen this next track, which is Trainspotting's like anthem, Born Slippy. Total cliche, so I'm Scottish, so I've chosen Born Slippy for this. But it's just like, it's the song of that period. And I can remember like Trainspotting came out, it was like 1996, and I was 15 at the time. And like me and my pal wanting to watch it, and me being sent in to buy the tickets for this film that was an 18 because I was slightly taller than him. Just like a logic within this, and just seeing that film and like for the first time, like seeing something on screen that felt like some of the places where I grew up, and like I don't know, just a sense of connection to like the music and the people in it, and yeah, and just never ever seen that in a movie before. So yeah,
brilliant. Well, let's jump on that. So third track coming up, and this is Born Slippy by Underworld.
Boy, and girls, boy, and
Excellent. Really going against type with that one there, mate. So how old were you when Trainspotting came out?
15.
15, blimey. Yeah. It changed everything, didn't it? And, you know,
Totally.
just, you know, that visceral story. I don't know about you, like I saw the film before I read the book. You know, it wasn't part of my vernacular at all, but something about society, and certainly the society that I was in, kind of changed when that came out. It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. Okay, so let's move on. So we've done the teenage years. You hinted at sort of going to university. Do you want to talk about that, and then through to kind of first jobs when you came out the other side?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess first jobs, like long before universities, I used to have like the most brutal paper round in the world. So I delivered like the 2 free newspapers that you got. I don't even know if these things still exist. Do people still get free newspapers through the door? So I delivered them, like, so the housing scheme that I lived in, I delivered for like half the housing scheme, and it was something insane, like 500 papers.
500.
Deliver like through a door, and it took forever. Being perfectly honest, they didn't always all get delivered somehow. But anyway, that's a whole other stuff. So that was my first job, and then like working in Asda, which I totally loved. Like I loved that job. That was amazing. Like just like the people I got to work with there. And then moved to uni to do geography, and then realised that geography at uni is not like geography at school, and then somehow ended up with a history degree. I got a first in history. No idea how that happened. But there you go me. And then went on to do a very boring master's degree, which was in business and IT. And then I think my first job, so I worked for a bank for a bit, which I hated, to be perfectly honest. And then I worked for a charity working with long-term unemployed people, getting people back into work. That was really interesting. And that was my first job in the charity sector.
Cool. Actually, I had one of those paper rounds as well. So there were 2 types of paper rounds that you could have. One which was delivering the free papers, which you could just get away with binning them all, and no one ever grassed you up. And
I didn't want to say that, but now you brought it up. There was a bit of that, yeah.
And the second type of one was the actual sort of daily papers, which was a bugger on a Sunday because you had all the supplements. It was absolutely enormous. But there was the chance that you would get a tip at Christmas. But for the free papers, there was nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Do you know one of the bonuses, though? I can remember one year with the free papers where you used to give away samples of the free papers. And stupidly, given that I was like, I don't know, 12 or 13 when I did this, one of the samples was a chocolate bar. So I had like 500 chocolate bars at one point, which was quite a phenomenal experience. Yeah.
Nice one. Okay, so I think we're on to disc number 4 now. So what have you chosen and why?
What have I chosen for disc number 4? So disc number 4 is the Skids Into the Valley. And the reason I've chosen this is the tune that Dunfermline Athletic come out to. But it is an amazing tune. And I also think, I don't think there's a cooler tune that any football club comes out to in the world than Skids Into the Valley, like total punk era classic. It's an amazing song. So this reminds me of going to watch Dunfermline Athletic, who are at the moment top of the Scottish Championship and are thrashing every team in front of them. And it's a weird existence as a Dunfermline fan. We almost went under a number of years ago, ended up getting relegated to the bottom division, and we've kind of slowly crept back up. So so it's quite an exciting time again to be a Dunfermline fan. So
here we go.
Into the Valley.
Richard Jobson's finest, the Skids, coming up.
This is the virtue.
They're from Dunfermline, aren't they?
Yeah, they're from. I should have mentioned that actually, shouldn't I? Yeah. So
Yeah.
Big Country, Nazareth.
Nazareth. There's a
Yeah,
band. Blimey.
yeah.
Okay, so we left it that you just you'd eaten your body weight in 3 samples of chocolate. You'd had a dodgy paper round. You'd gone to university. Stumbled out working in a bank, and then got your first sort of charity side job. Let's talk through the jobs that you've had from then up until the one that you've got now, which we'll talk about after the next track.
Yeah. So yeah, do you know what? Actually, what I kind of segue slightly into this. So the job that I didn't mention, which I did when I did my masters and to pay for my masters, I used to sell trainers on eBay. And before so trainers are like a huge thing now, like sell for like tons of cash. And so I, at one point, had a room in my house that had 500 pairs of trainers in it. And it was literally just trainers stacked from like the ceiling to the floor. And I would
Are these like rare trainers or just like?
Yeah, so like limited edition sneakers, and sometimes just like if I went in the shop and I was like, oh my God, that's a really good price for those shoes, I would just buy all the shoes that they had of that. And then I didn't have a car at that time. So I would literally be on public transport with like 15 boxes of shoes and bags carrying them home. Once my flatmate came back and he was like, Ross, where's the dining room table gone? And I'd dismantled the dining room table and replaced it with various boxes of sneakers. I wasn't a very good flatmate, as you can probably tell from that.
Yeah.
So
you made much money from that?
What was that, sorry?
You made much money from that? Was that a hustle or just like a weird passion?
That was all I did for a period of time.
Wow.
Which probably actually nicely, well, it kind of brings into the next track in a way. So when I met my partner, Rosie, who's now my wife, that's what I was doing. Like I was literally selling trainers from my bedroom. I wasn't much of a catch as a partner at that point in time, to be perfectly honest. I don't know if I am anymore. You'd have to ask her that. But yeah, at that point in time, selling trainers from my bedroom.
Wow. Best pair of trainers you have had?
Best pair of trainers I've ever had? Oh man, that's a tough question. I do quite like a pair of like any pair of made in England New Balance. Like,
oh really?
Nice craftsmanship, well made, not made in a sweatshop. Yeah. Lovely shoes. Yeah.
Nice.
I totally, you asked me a question there and I just like answered my own question and now I can't remember what the question was.
Mate, it's fine. It's like jazz. Just write it out. Let's move on to disc number 5. I think we're on. What have you chosen?
Yeah, so I've chosen Air, You Make It Easy. So this is the song that me and Rosie, my wife, had at our wedding. So this was our first dance, which is lovely. It was really interesting though. So we had our wedding with like the guy who was going to be the DJ at the wedding, and it was in Scotland, so obviously it rained. And so the guy was like loading his decks and like all the equipment out of his car. And we had the wedding in Rosie's dad's house, and he left all the equipment outside, and it rained. And so then the equipment caught fire when he tried to turn it on. So we're like, right, okay, so now we don't have a DJ. So he had to call his friend, and his friend had just come back from like Ibiza or someone, and all his friend played was hardcore tunes. And I was fine with this, but then suddenly my wedding had gone from being like this curated playlist of niceness that everyone like submit. We got people to submit songs in advance for it.
Yeah.
And then it just turned into like a rave with a man emceeing over the top of it, which was kind of beautiful in a way. But it's like I can remember at one point, like I think it was like talking to my auntie with Rosie, and like she's in a wedding dress, and then all you can hear from the next room is a bunch of people while there's like some hardcore track on shouting, here we fucking go," in the middle of a wedding. So that was
Oh, the romance.
I know, the romance in there. Yeah.
So this is Air. I've got to say, I was massively excited when you sent this one over, because that album, I wore it out. It's absolutely, there's so many good tracks on there. I had to revisit it when you sent across the playlist. Like that opening track, the French title, La Femme d'Argent, it's just got the most amazing bass line. And then Talisman, I remember like phoning people up and playing that down the phone to them. Like, you have to listen to this album. I was trying to sort of think about what it is, and I think there's something quite proggy about it, and I think that gets to me too. It's sort of electronica, but there's some like proggy old bass lines and riffs in there.
There's no filler on there at all.
No, it's absolutely. And weirdly, the "Sexy Boy," which is obviously the one that made him famous, is kind of my least favorite on the album.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so here we go. This is Air. So where are we now? So we talked about different jobs in the sector. No, we haven't really. What kind of roles have you had in the sector before the role that you're doing now?
Yeah. Are we recording this bit, or is this? Are we just kind of?
Yeah, it's all recorded, man.
This is. I know, but I more meant like, are we? Yeah. So other jobs that I've had in the charity sector. So what else have I done? So when I worked for Working Links, the charity who I worked for when I worked in employability, I had a really interesting job actually, where I worked for Govan Initiative. So I was working with like local colleges and like Govan in like south of Glasgow, and it was mainly for teenagers who hadn't gone through the school system and trying to get them access to more training and jobs. And I really loved that job. It was an amazing job. And then probably, I guess, like in terms of like there being a big break, there was a guy who took a total risk on me. I'd applied for another job as a development officer, so basically developing services. So like it's interesting like how service designs become such a big thing, and essentially the charity sector's been doing this for a very long time, and in different ways, and maybe never called it service design. But yeah, so that was one of my first jobs, and I was working with so it was Glasgow Community Planning Partnership, and then so we're doing work with like NHS and various other people, but it was essentially like designing services for kids coming out of the care system. And that was an amazing job, like totally loved that job. The guy that hired me took a bit of a risk in the sense that I'd kind of done that work, but it was a bit intangible. And he gave me that job, and it was like, yeah, ever since that's the kind of area that really interested me. And then I worked with a couple of counselling charities and a mediation charity. So it was actually 3 different charities, getting them to basically deliver partnership working. And did that for quite a number of years, and that was amazing. Again, just had an amazing boss during that time. And then worked so Relationship Scotland, who are part of that partnership. I ended up working with them doing a lot of digital work because I'd done a lot of digital service delivery quite early doors as part of that project, in terms of like how we onboard people and get people to understand what we do. And then I ended up coming for part of the time as digital media manager with Relationship Scotland, who are the kind of Scottish equivalent of Relate. So they've got about 22 services across the country. And then after time working that role, their head of comms retired, and I ended up applying for the job, and I got the job. So it was head of comms for a national charity. And so that was my last like job before I was entirely freelance. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll pause it there. That's excellent heritage there. So we're on, unless I'm very much mistaken, disc number 6. What have you chosen and why?
Yeah, so this one, I could have chosen any techno track over the years. Like, so just millions of choices, you know, from people like Carl Craig or Sven Vath or Richie Houghton. And I kind of thought, like, I've chosen Jeff Mills' The Bells because it's probably the techno track that everyone likes. Like, there's nobody who doesn't like this track. Even if you don't like techno, you pretty much like this track. So, yeah, that's why I've chosen it. But techno for me is like that's the music that I love above everything else. That's the music like that I want to go and dance to. And this tune reminds me of like the Archies in Glasgow. So it's like there is no club that is like the Archies. So I've been to like places like Cream, like Berghain in Berlin, and like been at clubs in Detroit, and like nothing comes close to the Archies in Glasgow. It's just the most full-on intense club that has ever existed, and it's like built under a railway arches. Total scuzzy shithole of a club. Like literally every single night. Like the toilets would flood every night. So it's like you'd literally be going to a club with water like that deep in the toilets. It was a disgusting place, but it was amazing. And like 2,000 people just going mental, dancing as one, and like nowhere ever comes close. What unfortunately happened is the council took umbrage with a lot of things that were happening in that club, and spent a long time trying to close it, and eventually closed it. And so sadly, the club is now basically a food court where middle-class people like me now go, and there'll be lots of little food trucks, and it's all very lovely, but it's like it's gone from... I think this is the thing that annoys me about clubbing, is like it's never been treated as culture in this country. So it's been treated as like a thing that kind of happens on the fringes. And so when they spoke about trying to save the Archies, they focused so much on there'd be like theatre shows would be on the Archies, and that's great. But like the thing that made money and the thing that thousands of people went to every week were club nights. So like Colours and Pressure and Inside Out, these massive club nights that attracted like global DJs that nobody else in Scotland was booking. And when it was spoken about, like nobody spoke about that as culture. They spoke about this theatre nights that weren't really particularly profit making as culture. And I think that's something that I found like really upsetting, is like the rapidness in which that place was closed, because it's just dance music is not seen as culture in this country.
Oh mate, it's giving me goosebumps. It's taking me back to my clubbing days, and there's always that club, isn't there? That one club that just connects deeply with you, and it's nothing to do with, you know, lights and money and glamour and whatever. It's just that the down and dirty, let's have it. So I was absolutely chuffed when this tune came across. This is the wizard himself, Jeff Mills. banger there. That's going to be pretty difficult to top, my friend. So let's have a chat about what you're doing now, work-wise. Where are you? What do you do? Who are you?
Yeah, who am I? Yeah, so I've been doing like charity digital work for like I was looking the other day at my LinkedIn. I don't know what it's like. I was looking at the other day at my own LinkedIn. There we go. There's an insight into my personality. I was checking it to update it, and like I've been doing charity digital work for like 12 years in different guises. I think probably the big area where I started out was around social media, inevitably. But I guess probably the difference between some of the work that I was doing and maybe the way that it was being approached by other people was even in those early days, trying to get charities to understand this is about how you get your job done. This is not a thing that fits neatly in some marketing and comms silo, but like fundamentally, how do you do what you need to do using these tools? And yeah, so that's kind of developed over the years and looking at, I guess, digital in a much more broad sense. And actually, more recently, it's been really nice coming back to that kind of service development work and doing more service design work. And like when the pandemic first started, so when COVID first hit, I was in this kind of general panic where I'm like, one of the big things that I do is I go out and train charities and I go and go into teams and actual organizations, and then suddenly none of us can travel anywhere. What even is my work anymore? And so that was when I guess two things happened. So I'd kind of put this call out on Twitter for like just a Zoom call to bring people together to talk about what do we do? What does digital service delivery look like? And then we started this collaborative Google Doc, just trying to pull together best practice so that anyone could like openly see that and could contribute to it. And then, so those calls, like we've got our next ones, I've been doing them in partnership with SCVO and the Catalyst. We've done, this will be our 40th one that we've done since the start of COVID. So the first one's had, the first one had some like 450 people came along to that first call. And so we've done like kind of thematic stuff. So we've had like people like Lou Down talk about like service design principles, people like Bruce Daisley talk about workplace culture. We've had some like phenomenal like world-class speakers who've came on and given up their time to come and talk to charities. But I think the big thing is like we've built what feels like a real community where people have come together and asked questions that in other forums they might feel, or they feel silly to ask, but they feel comfortable asking in that space. And it's been amazing. But that, like a lot of my work has shifted, but in a really good way of like suddenly that thing where charities were having to be convinced that digital has merit as a way of getting your work done or improving your processes internally. That convincing part just isn't there anymore in the same way because everyone's kind of jumped headfirst into it. So that's been a lot of my work recently. We did a really interesting piece of work recently where we worked with 10 charities over an intense 4-week period. So a discovery program with the Catalyst and National Lottery. So we took 10 charities and we did it in partnership with Open Change, so Mike and Hazel do amazing work in the service design space. But that was just a really, really interesting piece of work, and having that luxury of working with them over that long a period that intensely was just really nice.
That's amazing, man. More power to you. That's really inspiring to hear. Let's move on to what we're on now. 7th disc. What have you chosen and why?
Yeah, so this is, this one's probably kind of like the point that you made about Nina Simone. So this is a track by Bjork, and I could choose like countless tracks by Bjork because Bjork is just utterly phenomenal. And so her first album debut, just like when that album came out, just totally blew me away. I had like a massive, do you remember like HMV used to sell those posters that were maybe like 4 or maybe 6 times the size of a normal poster? A half a wall. And I had one of Bjork's album debut, and it was like on my wall, huge. I was just like obsessed with her, and I've just ever since like obsessed with Bjork. I think she's like, for me, is like the most consistently amazing, innovative artist that's ever existed. Like nobody comes close. Like if you look at so many artists, they've just kind of trundled along and reinvented the same thing, or reinvented themselves to the point where they're no longer the thing that they used to be. But just Bjork is just consistently phenomenal. And then so me and so my wife Rosie went to see her in November. She played at the Hydro in Glasgow.
Oh wow!
Which was phenomenal. It was really weird. I bought tickets for it and was talking about it online. I was just so excited about it. And then someone from, I don't know if it was Bjork's team or whoever else, got in touch with me in a direct message on Twitter, was like, "Oh, would you like to come and like be in a private box at the gig?" I was like, Yes, I would, very much so. And then, so we went along, watched Bjork with this like amazing view, like a glass balustrade and like a private bar and stuff. It was bonkers. But yeah, it was utterly phenomenal. It's like the best gig I have ever seen or will ever see. There's one point, like there was this giant bass cannon, like lowered from the ceiling, and like all the walls of the auditorium shook as this thing went off.
Awesome.
And like there was a point where she did like a solo, went into this little igloo and like did a solo in this. Like it was as weird as you'd expect. And like the first, like must have been about the first half hour was like an Icelandic choir. And you couldn't even see Bjork for about the first half hour. It was just this Icelandic choir doing folk songs. So yeah, she's just phenomenal.
Absolutely. And it says a lot that, you know, we've only done 3 episodes of Charity Island Disc and Bjork's cropped up on 2 episodes now.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah. Dana was a massive fan of Bjork as well. So here we are. Let's listen to a bit of Bjork.
creature called lust. It surprises and scares like me, like me. My name is so bad, married to myself. My love is so bad, living by herself. When she does it, she means to. Must delivers her message. Unexplained on your cover, crawling in silence as if for excuse. Na 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 na, na 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 na, na 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 na, na na in a tower of steel, nature forges a deal to raise wonderful hell like me, like me. My name is so bad, married to myself. My love is so bad, living by herself.
Yeah, you're right. You can basically choose any Bjork track at all, couldn't you? And I made the fatal mistake when I was talking to Dana on the last episode about how much I love Bjork, and especially her early career. And I forgot to say Sugar Cubes and said Sugar Babes. That's not cool. So, yeah, I lost a lot of credit there. So yeah, moving on from that. So we've been through the trajectory of your life. It's been amazing, really interesting. You're such a solid guy. Let's talk about kind of what does the future look like for you, both on a sort of professional and personal level.
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, do you know, it's weird, like, so lockdown and just generally everything that's happened at the moment is, on the one hand, been really difficult for everyone. From a personal point of view, like, I think it's been kind of nice that, like, I've spent a lot more time with my kids than I would have previously. You know, initially when they were off school, that came with its own challenges because, like, you know, most of the schools weren't doing much in terms of digital learning. There's a whole issue there, and we're trying to balance that whole thing. But, like, I'm not like rushing to Edinburgh to go and deliver some training and then sitting on a commuter train for like an hour to get back, and then they're in an after school club, and then you're rushing to do dinner and all that kind of, I don't know, life just hurtled along at a horrible pace, and
Yeah.
it just doesn't feel like that at the moment. It comes with its own challenges, but that side of it is just really, really nice, and I really like that. I think, like, so the work, like, this is totally gushing, but, like, so grateful, like, SCVO up in Scotland and the Catalyst for the opportunities of some of the work that I've been doing recently, like, so some of the kind of service design work that I've been doing, and just bringing people together to share ideas about digital service delivery, which is, like, you know, something I've been wanting to do for a long time, but just there's not been the space or the opportunity to do it at scale. You know, like, so a thing that we did over this period, so we had a thing called the Curve, where we basically brought together, like, some pretty phenomenal trainers to deliver free workshops. So we had these 90-minute workshops, and at one point we were doing 2 of them a week.
Wow.
We had, like, service design workshops. We had things like training charities how to use things like Microsoft Power BI. And so we did the final numbers the other day. We had over 1,300 people over the months of COVID attended training workshops. Phenomenal numbers. And just, yeah, so just that, working with partners like that and being able to do that stuff at scale was just, it's just been amazing. So yeah, I guess being able to do more of that stuff, and that kind of, that reuse in the sector, where the sector isn't like, you know, digital's a thing where you go and get some money from a funder, and then you go and you work with a digital agency, and they might be good, they might be crap, they might not know the sector at all, and you're kind of at the whim of these external people, and just helping people think about how they can take the power of this stuff into their own hands a bit more.
Fantastic. More power to you, man. Right. Final track. What are you gonna leave us with?
Yeah, so this is, like, I don't know, like, I was trying to think of, like, it's not like this is the ultimate techno track, because in many ways this track is kind of doesn't sound like techno at all. So this is DJ Rolando, so he's also known as Aztec Mystic. This tune's called Jaguar, and so he's on a label, Underground Resistance, a Detroit-based, like, underground techno label that, like, you know, that quintessential Detroit techno sound. And this tune for me is, like, just reminds me of so many club nights, going to techno nights, where, like, when this tune finally drops, and, like, that, the way that crowd goes, but it's just so melodic. And it's also interesting, actually, that connection. So DJ Rolando ended up, like, falling in love with a woman from Edinburgh, and I still think lives in Leith in Edinburgh. And it's like this weird connection where, like Glasgow has this. When people think about techno, they think about a place like Berlin or Detroit.
Yeah.
But actually, just how much of that sound, like, happened in Glasgow, and, like, so, like Daft Punk were signed to Soma Records in Glasgow. Like, that's how Daft Punk started. So just yeah. This for me is, like, the sound of all those nights, and just that feeling of euphoria.
Brilliant. So let's treat ourselves to a good 9 minutes, if it makes it through the final edit, of techno that isn't techno.
Listen to it. You know, I want to ask you something. Have you ever wondered why it is we love this music? I want to tell you a little story. See, all about me and my friends when we're going to the club. We get up in there every Saturday night, and it doesn't matter who the DJ is. It doesn't matter what the crowd looks like. But baby, every single time we get together, talking about having a good time with house music. Woo! You can feel it on the inside. Say, I know that I know that I know that I know. All right. Let me tell you something. Have you ever met those type of people that don't quite get it? That just don't understand what it is you feel when you hear Barbara Tucker say, I get lit. They just don't understand when India goes into her prayer, why it takes you there, and you don't understand. The words. And honey, it doesn't even matter if you got 2 feet. Woo! And we can feel it.
Right, so there we are, mate. You've been through one end and out the other. So you've had your 8 tracks. Let's have a think about what book you would take on your desert island and why.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, if my wife does listen to this, she'll probably be laughing hysterically because she'll be like, "What are you going to choose? Like Catcher in the Rye or some other cliche of the 3 or 4 books that are fiction books that I have ever read in my life."
Yeah, on the road.
yeah. So down and out in London and Paris. So I'm just going to choose a cliche and I'm just going to go with it anyway. So the book is Trainspotting. So
Yeah.
I read Trainspotting. I think I was like 13. The book came out in like 1994, and a friend of my mum's, her daughter was like a few years older than me, and she'd read it, and I got her a copy of it, and just remember reading it and just being like, this is the first time anywhere that I've read this language and these places that were like the place that I grew up being mentioned in this book. And so it's the book that still like totally struck a chord with me. I can also remember like trying to convince my teacher at school that I could write a discursive essay on Trainspotting, and they were like, "No, you're not allowed to write about that book." Like, right, okay. So it kind of shows as well like the impact that book and that film had on like UK culture, but particularly culture in Scotland at that time. Is like it kind of also like people forget like divided people. Like a lot of people were like, "This is glorifying drug culture and it's glorifying an underclass," and so many other things. Like a lot of people were angry about that book and that film. So that is my cliche book.
Yeah, no, absolutely banging cliche book. And it's a really weird one as well, because it just seemed like I read it and it just seemed so alien and strange. Do you know what I mean? But for you reading it, it must have been like, I know all of this. This is the way I speak. I know these places. It's like incredibly touching like that. Cool. Okay, so we've got your book now. I have no idea what you've chosen. What is your luxury item and why?
Yeah, do you know what my luxury item is? Coffee. So like I don't function as a human being without coffee. I went through a weird phase maybe a year or so ago where I was like, I'm going to stop drinking coffee. And I was a horrible individual for like a week, and then I immediately went back to drinking coffee. So yeah, coffee is my luxury item. What I might have been stupid in is like maybe I've brought coffee to this desert island and now I have a bag of coffee, but I have no way of making this coffee. And now I'm just going to like torture myself for years on a desert island looking at coffee and having no capacity to do anything with it. So
Well,
yeah,
let's have it that you have all the capabilities you need to make coffee whenever you like.
thanks.
When's your cut-off point for stopping drinking coffee? Do you drink it right into bed, or you got a midday?
No, generally like probably by like 5 o'clock. I'm not
Wow.
drinking any coffee by that, beyond that point. Yeah,
Cool.
too much.
Okay. So we've got coffee, we've got train spotting, and this is the divisive question that always pisses people off. If you had to choose one of your 8 tracks, and you have to, which one would you choose?
Bloody hell! Why do you have to ask that? Like, I don't know. What would I choose? Do you know what? Probably in a way, the tune that I would probably choose is Underworld, Born Slippy, because it's like meant different things at different points. Like I can remember, like, so me and Rosie went to I Love Techno in Belgium, which is like this massive techno festival, and Underworld were playing at it. And like, so this was like a good, like, you know, easily a decade on from that film coming out, and it's that song just still had the same impact a decade later, and it still has that same impact now. Like it doesn't sound dated in any way, shape, or form, and it still has that same effect and feeling on me. So yeah, Underworld, Born Slippy.
Brilliant, excellent. Oh, mate, thank you so much for coming on. I'm a massive fan of you, and it's absolutely brilliant to be able to sit down for an hour and just talk music with you.
Oh, thanks, man. Do you know what's funny? It's like this has been like a weird fantasy in my head for a very long time. Is like I'd like to go on a thing where people ask me about my weird musical tastes, and I just get to tell them about it, and they have to listen to me. And now it's happened. So
there you go, mission accomplished. So
Yeah,
thank you, Ross, and thank you everyone for listening. Stay safe, keep connecting, and keep being human. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Thanks, man.
Oh, mate, awesome.